You know what? We all want love, but most of us don't want to date to get it because let's be honest, dating sucks. But I fully believe it doesn't have to if we actually know what we're doing. Hi, I'm Kira Sabin, and this is Reinventing Dating, a smart and sweary podcast for all singles to learn the mindsets and skills to date with intention and confidence. Join me weekly as I break down the science and psychology behind what's working in our dating culture and what isn't. Every week, I'll bring a new topic, a trend, a skill, or mindset that can help us get out of our own way to learn how to date for relationships that we actually want. Because I fully believe and know that love isn't broken, but dating is. So let's reinvent it together. Well, hello there, everybody. How are you doing? How are you, my sugar petsies? It's Kira. On Sunday, I had some friends here for a couple of days. Yes, I have friends, a couple friends from high school, and they just left about an hour ago. And our conversations really got my mind stirred up. So I wanted to come over and do this podcast. And so I did a little bit of research, so I sounded like I know what I'm talking about. And today, guys, I want to talk about survival mode, which I think is a phrase we've all heard now at some point. And I think it's also something that virtually none of us really fully understand what it is. But if anything, my podcasts are teaching podcasts. I like to come over here and give real, fact-based, science-backed information that makes sense so you can learn from it and hopefully apply it. But it's always like a gift and a curse. And I think that they sometimes listen to this podcast, so they'll hear this. To have friends visit who've known you forever. I love that they've known me forever, right? But the one interesting thing about these two friends who I've known, both of them since basically elementary school, is that they also sometimes remember things I don't. We'll talk about why that is today. They were there when the magic began. They sometimes can clue me into myself almost in ways that I can't, because I was just saying yesterday, what were your guys' thoughts of me at that time? What was like outward facing? Because I only know what I felt on the inside. So I have no idea. And we've actually talked this weekend a little bit about who we thought we were versus what we've looked like on the outside and how that showed up. And that was actually a really interesting conversation. Be friends with a life coach. It's fun. Marry one. It's even more fun. Ask Danny. But we actually just always have some really good conversations. But it got me thinking about a lot of shit. I'm not going to lie. I'll be processing for a couple of days some of the conversations we had. The other little poke that made me want to do this podcast topic is I was on Instagram today because on Sundays I put Sunday Fun Days up, which are memes that I've seen throughout the week that I thought were really funny. And if you're not following me and checking those out, I definitely would. I think it's one of the best things I do in my life, which might be a really sad statement at this moment. But while I was there, I saw this cartoon and it just really hit me because I've been having a lot of conversations lately about just stress and exhaustion, and also bringing in then the perimenopause because my two friends are my age and we're all in different levels of it. But I've also just been having conversations lately about how I think we have global PTSD from the pandemic that we aren't talking about how to heal. And there's just a lot of extremes happening right now. And I think that has something to do with it. People feel very extreme in their beliefs. And I saw this cartoon, and I will put it in the notes of the podcast so you can see it, and it'll have, who it is by. I'm not sure right now. I'm not seeing it, but I will make sure that they get the credit for it. But I've seen it before, and their little hearts and brains are the cartoons. And in this one, the heart is carrying this huge rock on its back that says past trauma. All right. And then The heart keeps walking. And on top of that past trauma, we also get bad news, pandemic, stress. So I'm feeling that. And then the next one, you see him carrying this past pandemic, bad news, stress. And there's a little step from where he's walking, like a tiny step up. And it says minor inconvenience. And then the next one, we see the brain say to him, I think you're overreacting, because he has fallen from the minor inconvenience and is now crying. And that's what it can feel like. It can feel like when we meet somebody who is in survival mode and we see them have a really huge overreaction to a situation where we're like, okay, wow, that was an interesting choice or response. But what we don't see in the day to day is that when we are unhealed, when we are all open wounds, just raw walking around out there, when we bump into each other or something happens and somebody cuts somebody off in traffic or whatever it is, it's truly a minor inconvenience, but it can feel like the end of the world for a little bit or just the ruiner of the day. And if that's true, and I can tell you right now that there are times in my life where that's absolutely been true, you might be in survival mode. And so today I want to talk about what survival mode is, signs that you are in it, what some of the effects are of living in survival mode, and then, of course, what to do. That's how I usually teach. I do. What is this actual thing really simply? And then how do you know if this applies to you? That's the next. And then what's the how or the why? Maybe where did it come from? And then how do we either shift it or apply it or change it or whatever it is? That's the process that I usually do. And I do it on these podcasts too. By the way, this is going to be a two-parter because I can see this is going to be a big conversation. Right now, I think it's really fair to say that we are in like a perfect storm of stress. And if you live in the States, which I do, you may feel that even more right now. I think you definitely feel that even more right now. And I just think we have this kind of perfect storm of stress. It's a bullshit election year. I think we all have some PTSD from the pandemic. A lot of us were alone or were isolated or had loss and we're still grieving. And that might not have been a person, but it might have been a job or a business or a friendship or just a huge shift in your life that you haven't quite learned how to deal with yet. And here is the poop-diddy-poopness of this, is that if you are like me and have perimenopause, which I'm going to just call 50s puberty, everything is heightened. Everything is worse because you feel all of this stuff so much worse and your body is actively working against you. So whether or not you guys ever work with me, and I hope you're thinking about Thrive, because I'm definitely going to mention it on this. And don't be snotty about it because this is my business. I make zero money off of this podcast. Every podcast that you see here, and by the way, I've done over 375 episodes, just they're not all available. It's free. You notice there's no ads, anything else. It's just free. So let me talk to people who want to work with me. But the thing is about trauma, which can be 100 different things, a million different things, by the way, is that it always comes out. And one of the conversations I had recently that I thought was really interesting was that somebody was talking about kind of the older generation of their family. So not just their parents, but their aunts and their uncles and that kind of generation. And they were talking about how their family had some bad shit go down in their childhood, and some of them dealt with it and some of them didn't. And what we're starting to see is that people who haven't really processed out that trauma, worked with a therapist, because that's not a coach, that's a therapist, that it starts showing up in other ways. OCD, you have to control everything all the time, because if you're not in control, everything feels out of control. And when we're in our 20s, we're not thinking about it yet. We're not feeling it in the after effects yet. But as we get older, and that can also show up as hoarding. Hoarding is another byproduct of trauma. It can show up as lots of things. But one of the smaller, not so obvious ways, because you know what? We usually know when somebody is a hoarder, and we might recognize when somebody is OCD because they have to have things a certain way at all times. And if they're not a certain way at all times, then it's very upsetting. We all have that person probably in our lives or in our family. And that's not them just being particular or a perfectionist. That is a trauma response. And I just saw this quote in one of the articles I was looking at, and it just said, trauma makes assholes of all of us. And I think that is the best statement I have maybe ever heard, or maybe heard today, but it really does. Even I forget that hurt people hurt people. Even I get frustrated or disappointed with someone and forget that the reason that they're doing what they're doing is a response to something they didn't get that they needed, to something that happened to them that wasn't okay. But we forget that shit because we're in our own version of survival modes and we're tired and we just want things to be easy, and then other people aren't easy. Now throw a pandemic that we all felt. So even the people who are more healed are feeling this. So what the fuck is survival mode? What is it? How do you know if you have it or if you are in it? It's not disease. It's not a virus. You can't catch it. And I will make sure that I put the articles in my show notes. But the definition is survival mode is a state of prolonged, unresolved stress that can occur during times of crisis, trauma, or chaos. It could also be just called chronic stress. So you are chronically stressed. You never relax. You never feel calm. You are always busy. And I'm going to break these down, so don't worry, you don't have to write down what I just said. In survival mode, the nervous system is overwhelmed and it's stuck in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn stress response. This can lead to a constant state of alertness and stress, which can impact your cognitive abilities, your decision making, and your emotional and physical energy, plus a lot of other things. And research has actually found that humans are less skilled than animals in restoring to homeostasis once a moment of danger is. So animals know that once a moment of danger has passed, their body is able to process out their hormones and go back to a state of calm. Who do you know who can do that? There's people who can do that, but I would not say the average American is doing that at all. Now, one of the other things that you can tell that you are in survival mode is if you are hypervigilant. And it's this increased state of alertness. You are always alert. You are always looking for danger. You are always making sure that you are safe in every situation you're in, sometimes even at home. Or the minute you leave your house, everything feels unsafe. You're extremely sensitive to your surroundings. And it can make you feel like you're alert to any hidden dangers, be other people or the environment. And often the dangers are not real. So maybe you walked around stressed for an hour and then realized nothing really actually happened or was going to happen to you. But your body and your brain couldn't turn it off. So here are some other just less sciencey, termy signs that you are in survival mode. So the main one is that constant feeling of stress and alertness, which can be like a tightness. And the thing is about stress is sometimes we're so used to being stressed, we don't even know we feel stress anymore. It can be such a natural state for us from the moment we wake up to the moment we finally fall asleep. But people in survival mode are constantly stressed and alert, which then leads to low energy levels. And it's different than normal stress because normal stress is there's a moment here that's causing me stress or making me feel unsafe. And now that moment has passed and I'm okay again. When you're in survival mode, that stress does not fade away. It also just doesn't have a simple solution. There isn't just a money you can throw at it. You can't just do one thing and then it's fixed. And it's this kind of stress that leads to the following things. So another sign you are in survival mode is that you have that inability to relax. Like you just can't relax. You have to be busy or doing something or talking to people or consuming content or something. You struggle to calm yourself in any environment. You are hyper focused on the stress. Calm is not a state you feel comfortable with. Next, you have a desire for numbness. And I don't want to think that any of us think at the beginning of the day, like, how do I numb myself today? I don't think that's our thought. But by the end of the day, when we're like, I need to have that glass of wine, that piece of cake, that 3 hours of scrolling on my technology, that gummy or that puff of something. And it's not just for pleasure and it's not just for survival. And it's you can't calm or relax without that. Or by the way, here's another one that not everybody loves to think about. Sometimes you just go back to work. Overworking is a way to numb. It gets us out of thinking about our feelings or maybe something bad that happened to us that we don't want to think about or something we have to deal with that feels hard or challenging. Overworking is a trauma response. And then I thought this was really interesting, and I wanted to bring it up in the kind of desire for numbness, which is romanticizing the past. So maybe you left a relationship or job or city, and there was a reason you did. But sometimes we can be really nostalgic. And I think that really shows up in midlife. I think I am so nostalgic now in a way that I never was. I was always a super forward thinker. What's coming up? What's next? What trip am I going on to next? What new thing am I doing? Whatever it is. And something about, I would say this started happening 5-6 years ago, that I started just having these little pangs of, wow, that now is 20 years ago or 25 years ago. That will never happen again. That was a moment in time that I will never get to experience again. I'm not trying to depress anybody. I'm sorry. This is just stuff that comes up for me. But you realize maybe that friendships that meant a lot to you and you're not even in touch anymore. Or just that, oh my God, how did I get here? But romanticizing the past, and we can definitely do that with a relationship, with a lot of things. And we can get stuck in our numbing is being in that other place in our mind, being in that past relationship and thinking about it over and over, although it ended for a reason. If the only way that you can calm is by numbing yourself, you're probably in survival mode. This is a big one. Changes in memory. So not just trauma, and they've proven this in trauma that a lot of times when you have traumatic experiences, you block a lot of them out. Our brain does things to protect us and keep us safe so we can function, because its goal is to function. So it will protect us from things and information. But unfortunately, the brain can't decipher very well what we need to see or know or do to feel better. When you are chronically stressed, when you are in survival mode, you might have memory issues of just somebody asking like, how was your day? What'd you do today? And you're like, God, I don't even know. And you're coming up with maybe one or two things. Maybe you're forgetting or just struggling to remember small things throughout your day or situations that happened. That's a sign you're in a survival mode. Next, and boy, do I feel this, and I'm going to tie the word burnout to it, but constant fatigue and exhaustion. And I'll describe this the way that I feel, which is I never feel awake. I never feel fully like, whoo, so good and happy to be here. I wake up refreshed. That doesn't exist for me. It hasn't for a very long time. I'm always tired. And by the way, this is not just survival mode. This is also some stuff going on with my body. That's the other thing, is that perimenopause just takes these shitty things and makes them all worse or heightened. You find yourself running on empty. You're barely getting through each day, but yet you might not be able to sleep. And even when you do wake up tired and unrefreshed, that's exactly how I feel. Now, I have more joy in my day because I put more joy in my day because I actually know about positive psychology. But I had to look at my life and go, okay, I've moved away from some of the things that I was doing that made me feel good and add them back in, because I was just either crying or angry all the time. And things are getting better. I've got some good supplements. I'm working more on meditation again and some mindfulness and just resting, which that was the greatest part about this weekend is I put my computer away and turned my phone off except for music and really didn't look at it. The next sign that you might be in survival mode is forgetting to care for your basic needs. What does that look like? Having trouble brushing your teeth, exercising, watching your face, changing your sheets. Survival mode will slow or even stop a lot of the normal functions that a person's brain does because it's having to prioritize trying to fix the trauma or whatever is causing the stress. So you just stop doing things that you like doing or keeping you going or even just basic self-care. Survival mode can lead us into anxiety and depression. When I'm not doing my basic needs, that's when I'm depressed. It can even be this forgetting to eat, where we're doing something or we're so distracted, we're so stressed out, or just have to get this project in or whatever it is, that we're like 6 hours later, oh my God, did I eat lunch? Oh my God, I didn't eat lunch. And now I'm starving. That's the hangry. But that's a sign you might be in survival mode. Here's another one. You're stunting your personal growth, which means when you have that level of stress, it leaves so little time for or energy for hobbies, for interests, for self-improvement, for learning, for new classes, meeting new people. And this can also lead to a lack of motivation and inspiration and just a sense of dissatisfaction with life. So not only are you not doing the things that bring you joy, you're like not even motivated to do virtually anything besides numb or work usually. And work because we have to get paid. Another sign you are possibly in survival mode, just mood swings and emotionally reactive. So often experiencing mood swings as a result of their brain being hyper-focused on the stress all the time. So rather than the brain being able to maintain your emotions, that's the sign of a survival brain. So if you find yourself being more upset about things and truly overreacting, and if you're not sure, ask somebody you trust. Ask a friend who you think is a healthier friend. Ask a therapist, ask a coach, whoever. But say, am I responding to this in a normal way? Or am I really overreacting to this? Because I know that we're like, and I agree, I hate being called dramatic when I was a kid or Kira, you're overreacting. And by the way, I fucking wasn't. Just so was not. That's what child neglect looks like. But overreacting is when maybe somebody hurt your feelings without intending to, and that it's all you can think about for like days. But you don't talk to them about it, by the way. You just seethe and you just come back to it and you're ruminating and you're mad. You might be snippier, you might be grumpier, you might cry more. You can see how survival mode could make perimenopause 20 times worse. Because we can get ourselves out of survival mode. I don't know. We can make our perimenopause or menopause better, but I don't think anybody's skipping it. The next sign that you might be in survival mode is overwhelm and just you feel unable to even make a decision. Because when your brain is having to deal with that stress and it's in that hypervigilance a lot of the time, even small decisions like what are we having for dinner feel exhausting. We're just like, fuck, I don't even care. And then when it comes, you're like, oh, I didn't even want that. But even the smallest decision, what to eat for lunch, what to use a pen or a pencil, just feels overwhelming. Or even tasks that you would have maybe kicked off in a morning now are just sitting there and you don't even know where to start, how to do it, any of it. That's a sign of your brain being in survival mode. And that overwhelm can lead to decreased productivity, increased mistakes, and just feeling of being stuck in a never-ending cycle. And then finally, one of the signs that we are in survival mode is isolation and hyper-independence. People in survival mode may socialize less and their relationships may fade because you can't either tend to the emotions of another person or you can't tend to your own emotions that you feel about the other person. Let's say that a hiccup comes up. You just are like, shut it down. I'm out because I can't deal with that. Even if it's small, it becomes huge. You're out because your brain is focused on stress and making sure that you are safe rather than, why don't I have a conversation and see what this is really about? Or if this is a reason maybe we shouldn't be together, or if this is a hiccup and we can talk it through. Or maybe I'm just making a shit ton of assumptions, which is all of us. It can also make people look and feel self-centered, or Isabella Rom-Com Rescue likes to say, causing them to neglect the needs of others and then once again themselves. And that hyper independence can also show up to you don't ask for help because you're the only one who can get it done. Why ask for help when everybody else doesn't do it the right way, or they're never going to do it as good as you or as fast as you? But then we burn our fucking asses out until we can do nothing. And that you are in survival mode is that you feel like you can't ask for help because whatever you're doing, it's your job. And asking for help means that you have failed. By the way, it's totally not true. But when you're in survival mode, what's true or what's not true, your brain doesn't care because it's going to go back to the safety of survival. So, what are some of the effects of living in survival mode? The number one effect is, you and I both know, stress impacts your health. And in fact, they learn more and more that stress, and more importantly, the hormones that are created from constant stress, can really hurt your body. It not only can lead to lighter symptoms like headaches. I don't know. If you have bad headaches, that's probably not a light symptom. Fatigue, trouble sleeping. But it can also then lead to high blood pressure, weakened immune system, making you more susceptible to illnesses. They've pointed to a lot of heart and stroke problems being caused by stress, as well as there's a lot of new theory that unprocessed trauma in our body can create chronic illnesses. Stress and trauma for that matter, and really stress usually comes from some level of trauma that has not been dealt with. But stress can kick your body's ass. And when it's in there long term, you know that's not good. Ulcers, all of it. Next, another effect of living in survival mode: mental health concerns. It can lead to anxiety because when you're that hypervigilant, everything feels scary. Social situations feel scary. Going somewhere new feels scary because you're so worried about the world being unsafe. It can lead to depression. That's where mine kicks in. And then most importantly, one of the words and probably most important themes that I probably need to add to the info page is burnout. I want to help people learn how to work through burnout and get over it. Because once you're burned out, if you don't know how to get out of it, if you don't have those skills to apply, you'll just stay in it. And you can be burned out for years. And these mental health challenges make everyday tasks just feel more difficult. And let's be honest, they affect your well-being. Anxiety stops us from doing things, and depression stops us from doing things that we love. So they are truly affecting our lives, not just feeling stressed out or sad all the time, but because we don't want to create the friendships or the relationships or go after the jobs or new things when we are in that place. Another effect of living in survival mode are unhealthy coping mechanisms. Here was my coping mechanism in the past. Here were some of the hits, the greatest hits, the highlights, shall we say. Drinking. Oh my God, my days sucked. You want to meet for martinis? Do you want to meet for wine? Do you want to meet for old fashions? Until there was just a point where I realized I couldn't run this business and still be drinking because my body caught up with it. It's like, nope, that's not your coping mechanism anymore. And also because Danny became sober, so I kind of had to look at my own relationship with it. Next one, eating. Now, I have many complicated challenges with eating in my body and PCOS and hormones and everything else, and now perimenopause. But when nothing else feels good, when I'm so stressed out all the time, and I'm barely finding joy in life, and I don't have the time or the energy to see people and whatever, where I can always get my dopamine hit, food. I love food. I love it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when I'm leaning into it as the only way to feel good, that's when it all gets a little dicey. Same thing with drinking. There's nothing wrong, depending on your relationship with alcohol, by the way, I should say that. But if you love a glass of wine every once in a while, whatever. I'm not judging anybody for that. But when that becomes the way that we cope with life, that becomes a problem. Shopping. Just getting that hit from adding things to the cart, having them show up, get to open up presents that you send to yourself, and then feel empty inside because they didn't make you happy in the long run. An effective living in survival mode is these coping mechanisms can end up really hurting us. Drinking's fun until you're drinking on a level where you're saying things to your friends that you shouldn't have said, or you're embarrassing yourself and the people who love you in public. We need food for sustenance in our body. It's one of the hardest things of people talking about food being addiction because we have to have food to live. But you and I both know if you're so stressed out and the only way that you're dealing with it is to get the hit off the salt or the sweet or whatever, but then your body feels like shit, you don't feel good about yourself, then that long term isn't working. And that's also just one of the things about being stressed and in survival mode is you're making day by day decisions. You're not making 5-year ahead decisions because you're just trying to get through the fucking day or the week. And then it starts again. So you're not saying if I keep drinking like this or eating like this or whatever, 5 years from now, that could maybe really take a toll on my health or my relationships or whatever it is. When you are in survival mode, you can just barely get through the day. So you're making whatever decisions you have to make to just get things to feel okay for a little while. That is not a way to live. And I say that because I realize, and I've had to say that to myself more than a couple times recently. So that feels very raw for me too. But I don't know if this is midlife or just me. And feel free to email me if you are feeling any of these feelings, by the way, because I know I'm not alone, but it sure is nice to hear that I'm not alone. But as things have been a struggle over the last year, which I've talked pretty openly about with my health and my business and a few other things, those moments in time, let alone with just midlife, cause reflection, they shove you down so hard that you have to stop in your tracks and go, wow, something's not working. Something's got to give. I said this a couple of episodes ago. There's a point where we have to get over our own shit, our own BS and go, yeah, this isn't working anymore. And I just looked at Danny and said, why retreats, though they are so hard, though at the end of the day, I probably don't make a dime on them. By the time, with all the work I do, they fill me fucking up. They satisfy me in a way that looking at a screen all day, every day does not do for me. And like I said, I don't know if this is because I'm Gen X or midlife crisising or whatever it is. And I don't know if you guys feel this way or not, but I just said to him, this is not a life. Me staring and looking at some size screen every day, all day. This isn't a life anymore. And as much as I love working from home and being able to throw on my yoga pants and come out to the couch and work all day and record my podcast and yada, yada, it also created some not great things for me. When I isolate more, I start believing that people suck more because I'm not getting the good interactions. So I'm just stuck in this online loop of shit. I don't honestly think anymore, guys. And I don't know, maybe this is Midwest farming or whatever, but I don't feel satisfied at the end of a day after looking at my computer. I'm not like, that was a good day of work. Now, sometimes, like after my retreats or after a day at a retreat, I absolutely feel that way. When I'm teaching group programs online, like at the end of that 2 hours, I'm like, yes, that was amazing. But really, that's only a small part of my business. I'm creating content, I'm doing social media, I'm making these podcasts, and I'm posting these podcasts. And honestly, there's a list of 500 other things that I do every other week for this business that are tiring and exhausting and just mildly shitty. For those of you who are like thinking about quitting your life to become a life coach, just throwing that out there. But I didn't make it to fucking 51 when some of the people in my life didn't, just to look at a fucking computer screen all day. Or just numb myself so that I'm not finding joy in things that I love and people I love. This is where survival mode and stress and trauma they take away our lives. Anyway, so unhealthy coping mechanisms are as an effect from living in survival mode. And next is strained relationships. The stress and irritability that comes with being in survival mode can strain your relationships with family, with friends, with colleagues. And once again, like I talked about before, you're numbing, you're not taking care of yourself, you're maybe not sleeping, you're stressed all the time. Of course, that's going to strain your relationships. You might find yourself having more conflicts, feeling misunderstood, and just stopped withdrawing because you just feel like nobody gets you because everything feels so fucking hard all the time. Another effect of living in survival mode: reduced productivity and creativity. Now, listen, I am like more and more anti-capitalist every single day. So we're not going there right now, but this isn't about you being productive for your boss. This is about, once again, doing things, doing them well, being able to focus on them in a non-stressed way. So at the end of the day, you feel good about yourself. Feel like you are giving back to the world, because that shit matters, by the way, guys. That really matters. That is a major part of positive psychology, is meaning and purpose. We're doing a whole 6 weeks on it because I think that one of the things that gets lost in midlife is meaning and purpose, or it's shifted. And what our meaning and purpose was at 25 or 30 or 35 doesn't maybe apply anymore. Especially if your meaning and purpose was maybe being a mom, being a wife, and you got divorced. Those are real things. And I'm not saying that anybody should be like, my purpose as being a spouse. That's not what I'm saying here. But it's definitely a part of your purpose when you're in a long-term relationship. You are there tending to that relationship. So that's the kind of productivity I'm talking about. And creativity. Creativity is actually beautiful for your happiness and joy because it's a way of expression. And most of us are not expressing ourselves enough or very well. It's why we're doing art therapy in the program. And it's why you get mindfulness crafts every fucking month. Did you know that? You get crafts for virtually every month that you are in the program. You get a craft that you get to do, and it's not for the finished product. It's for the process of mindfulness that you will be a part of when you do the craft. But just like everything else, when you're stressed on that level, when you are in survival mode, it consumes your mental energy and your creativity because it has to tend to the fixing of the stress. And then, of course, this is super obvious. When you're living in survival mode, it impacts your enjoyment and satisfaction. It just does. You stop doing things you love to do because the side effects of the survival mode, like what it does to our mental health, to our bodies, to everything else. Activities you used to look forward to and love, you don't, because everything feels so fucking hard. And it feels like we don't have the time or the energy or the money or the anything. Who hears this? Who feels this? Who knows this? One of my awesome former clients I was chatting with this morning, and she said she was listening to these podcasts, and she's like, have you been in my house for the last 5 years? And I was not. But God, that came off really creepy. But a lot of us are feeling this way. And let me tell you, the most interesting side effect of the work that I do is how it blows open my former perceptions, or all of a sudden I'm like, okay, yeah, that's something that I maybe need to go back to working on a little bit. because I'm seeing myself in some of the things. And in fact, I will tell you, about 3 or 4 months ago, I saw myself in this space and had to apply these things back in. And that's also when I made the shift of starting to work on this program. And it's brought back enthusiasm and meaning and purpose and grit and resiliency and some things that went away for a while. The thing is that I'm not sharing it today because this is already a long enough podcast. I'm going to do it tomorrow or the day after. This isn't a way to live. Life can be better than this. I wanted to say those who can do thrive should just do it just so we can get ourselves through election season together, because it's a shit show. And nobody better come back on me like, I liked your podcast how you got political. If you're a woman in America and you're not political right now, you're not listening or paying attention. And that's your own thing, but don't be harping on mine for fucking caring for what's going to happen to my nieces, to my sister, to the women in my life that I love and deserve the basic human rights to their own bodies that, as I'd like to remind everybody, men have never had to fight for. Nothing. And you don't have to believe what I believe, but don't expect me to believe what you believe. That is self-centered, or self-focused is the nicest way to put that. But that's also then a trauma response. I'm going to come back in the next day or two with what we can start doing to work on this. Now, I'm going to tell you this is the exact shit we're doing in Thrive. Now, I am not saying I'm healing your trauma in Thrive. If you know you have some shit that you need to work through, that is 100% to be done with a therapist. And dig in with a trauma therapist. Look into EMDR. Not all therapy modalities are the same. So sometimes people have gone to a therapist that maybe they didn't like that much or click with, or maybe was not a modality that was interesting to them or they needed. And then they're like, well, I guess therapy didn't work for me. And I'm just saying, you know how you try a deodorant and it just doesn't work? You don't stop wearing deodorant. It just means that the deodorant you tried wasn't the right fit for your body's chemistry. And same thing with therapist. It's another human. It's a relationship that you're creating. So you can get picky. You can ask for different people. You can fight for what you deserve because you or your insurance is paying for it. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. I hope that you guys who are listening, I hope that you're not feeling or seeing some of this stuff as much as I am. I hope for your sake you're not. I had to crawl myself out of it, but I'm really glad that I had the tools and the knowledge to do so. I don't know how anybody else is doing this right now, but I will say that I think I mentioned this in the first Midlife episode I did, that I'm in this Gen X women Facebook group online. And honestly, the posts are heartbreaking. Discussing like perimenopause. They didn't know they had it. They thought they were going crazy or their body broke down. Or all of these people now questioning their relationships and they're not happy anymore. They thought their relationship would look differently, or the relationship with their husband or their partner would feel differently at this place. I don't think this is an easy time in life at all. I hope that you're dealing with it better. I hope that you're not feeling or having some of the signs of survival mode. But if you are, I want to let you know you don't have to be. So here's where I think there is a disconnect in our process of healing, is that I think that therapists are incredible at helping us heal that trauma, those perspectives, all of these different things. But sometimes we then don't have the next steps on how to do things better. So we're left in this kind of neutral state of, I don't feel as bad anymore, but I don't feel good. And that's where I come in. That's where positive psychology comes in. That's exactly what fucking positive psychology is, which is not toxic positivity in any way, by the way. But that's exactly positive psychology. It was created because all of psychology so far had been about taking somebody who is struggling and then bringing them up to a neutral place, which is a beautiful thing because there's a lot of people struggling. Even if you had a really good childhood, something might have happened to you out of your parents' control that has left an impact that you have not gotten past, which is what trauma is. I think we think trauma is always the really terrible bad things, like you had to go to war. It's not. It can be neglect. It could be an accident you had as a kid. It can be an abusive relationship that you had in high school. But it makes no difference what it is. If we don't feel it to heal it, it doesn't go away. But that's why we can get help, get support, go to therapy, get coaching, take classes, get certifications. There's so many cool things that we can do now to heal and then help other people heal. That's what gets me up in the morning. I know that I'm not doing what therapists do. I also know there's a shit ton of people who are in way better relationships because of me. And that comment was 16 years in the making. Oh my God, am I going to cry every fucking episode? Probably. By the way, when you go on retreats with me, I give you prizes for crises. So you want to cry first because you get the best prize. They're like $3 prizes, but just the same. Crisis for prizes. Because I want to celebrate us expressing our emotions and feelings. Because so much of what we learned as Gen Xers and elder millennials is that you don't. That feelings are weak. Don't do that. That's terrible. But unfortunately, we have to heal, even though others hurt us. Because nobody's going to do it for us, guys. Nobody's going to do it for us. You may not be the one who hurt you, but you are in charge of being the one to heal you. And if you are in survival mode and you don't want to be anymore, because fuck is it a hard place to be. I've been there more than once. You don't have to stay there. And you can just have really smart conversations with me like all the time. What a dream for everybody. Enjoying already the couple women that have signed up who are amazing because I know them. All right, I'll be back in tomorrow or the day after with the second part of this, but hopefully you learned a lot already. If this hit you, if this spoke to you, if me sharing my stories has made you relate in any way, email me, rqkira@gmail.com. I respond to people. There's no team over here, just me. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your Sunday, an incredible week this week. And I hope that if you feel the pull to some of the things I'm talking about, if you went uh-oh a couple times in this episode, or a lot of times, then you'll maybe check out working with me. I honestly don't ask that much. ThriveWithKira.com is the program. All types of payment plans available. And you don't need to know if it's right for you or not. Let's just get on the phone this week. All right, guys, that's it for today. I hope that was helpful. If you liked this, please subscribe so you don't miss any of the future episodes. And also share it with everybody. Let them know you like this podcast. It's helpful and it gets it out there. Finally, if you love it, please leave a review, whether it's just some stars on Apple or Spotify, or writing down what you really love about this podcast. I read every single one. They fucking make my day. You become a hero in my mind, and it just makes the world a little bit better place. All right, guys, I'll be here next week. And until then, meet love halfway.